morning of June 12, 1962, a guard at Alcatraz looked into a prison cell and saw a head on the pillow. The face was not moving, the skin looked wrong, the hair looked wrong, and the longer he stared, the less it looked like a sleeping man. He reached toward the bed, touched the head, and suddenly the truth broke open. It was fake. A painted dummy head, crude, silent, placed on a pillow to fool him from the doorway. But the body under the blanket was not a body, the bed was empty. Then came the second cell, another head, another empty bed. Then the third, another prisoner gone. In the most feared prison in America, 3 men had vanished while the doors were still locked. Frank Morris, John Anglin, Clarence Anglin. Gone. Not over the wall in daylight, not through the front gate, not during a riot. They disappeared from inside Alcatraz itself. That was the part no one could explain. The guards were on duty. The cells were locked. The bay was freezing. The island was surrounded, but the beds were empty. Within minutes, the rock turned from a prison into a panic. Guards ran through corridors. Flashlights hit the walls. Mattresses were ripped apart. Vents were checked. The alarm spread across the island. 3 inmates were missing. A 4th man, Alan West, was still inside, and he knew exactly why. The escape had not started that morning. It had been hiding in plain sight for months. In the routine, in the noise, in the barber shop, in the laundry, in the music that covered the sound of scraping concrete. Alcatraz had spent years watching its doors, but the men had not escaped through the doors. They escaped through the prison's blind spot, and by the time the guards understood what they were looking at, the rock had already lost them. Months before the guards found those fake heads, the escape was already alive. Not in a riot, not in a tunnel anyone could see. It was hidden inside the most boring thing in Alcatraz: routine. Every day, the doors opened. The guards walked the same paths. The inmates lined up the same way. And 4 men moved through the prison like strangers. Frank Morris watched the cell block. John Anglin listened in the mess hall. Clarence Anglin studied the yard. Alan West studied the wall. They never looked like a team. That was the point. One man kept his face calm. One man kept his hands busy. One man watched the guards. One man listened for silence. Then night came, and the cells changed. A spoon disappeared. A scrap of metal vanished under cloth. A broken blade became a secret. When music filled the block, the men worked. When the corridor went quiet, they froze. When a guard's flashlight crossed the cell, everything had to look ordinary. A bed, a blanket, a tired prisoner, a wall nobody cared about. But behind that wall, the escape was growing. The first disguise was not the dummy head. It was the cell itself. Painted cardboard hid damage. Fake grills hid darkness. From the corridor, the prison looked untouched. But behind the wall, Alcatraz was being opened. Then they built the faces. Not for daylight, not for close inspection, only for one tired glance from a doorway. At the wrong distance, the fake heads looked alive enough. Hair came from the barbershop floor. Skin came from paint and dust. Up close, they looked wrong. From far away, they looked asleep. Then came the bay. Alcatraz didn't need to catch every prisoner. The water could do that for it. So raincoats began to disappear, one at a time, folded, hidden, saved. The route behind the wall was open, and Alan West was running out of time. On the night of June 11th, 1962, Alcatraz looked calm. That was the lie. Inside the cells, the fake heads were ready. Blankets were shaped like bodies. From the corridor, they looked asleep. Frank Morris waited for the noise to fade. and watched the bars. Clarence Anglin listened for footsteps. Alan West checked the wall one last time. Then the lights softened. The block went quiet, and the men moved. Morris slipped toward the opening. John followed. Clarence followed. West tried to follow, but his opening would not give. He pushed harder. The prison held him. Behind the wall, the others climbed into darkness. Pipes rose above them. Concrete scraped their shoulders. And below them, the cell block stayed silent. A guard passed the beds. The heads did their job. One glance was enough. The guard moved on, but Alan West was still trapped inside his cell. He could hear the escape leaving him. Morris, John, and Clarence kept moving, up through the service space, toward the roof. The wind hit them first, then the black sky. They crossed the roof low and fast. Below them, Alcatraz was asleep. Searchlights missed the blind spot. The men reached the outside wall, down the pipe, onto the ground, across the last open space. Every second could expose them. The bay waited below, cold, black, loud. At the waterline, the raincoat bundle was ready, not clean, not perfect, just enough to try. 3 men stepped into the dark. The island disappeared behind them. The current took hold, and Alcatraz did not know yet. Inside the cell block, the beds still looked full. Alan West remained behind. By morning, he would be the only one left to explain. But that night, the rock stayed silent, and 3 men vanished into the bay. By morning, the silence broke. The fake heads were found. 3 beds were empty, and Alcatraz locked down. Guards flooded the corridors. Every cell was searched. Every wall was checked. But Alan West was still inside. He was the only one left. Outside, the bay became the search ground. Boats cut through the fog. Helicopters circled the rock. Searchlights swept the water. Investigators studied the shoreline. Then pieces began to surface. Raincoat fragments, broken debris, water-damaged scraps. The evidence was there, but the men were not. No bodies, no confirmed remains, no final wreckage. Officials said they likely drowned. The water was freezing, the current was brutal. The distance was unforgiving. But the story did not die. Sightings began, rumors spread, letters appeared. Most leads went nowhere, but some were harder to dismiss. Investigators kept looking. The files grew thicker. The answer stayed missing. Did the bay take them, or did they get away? Alcatraz had walls, Alcatraz had guards, Alcatraz had water. But Alcatraz had blind spots. Frank Morris found one. John Anglin followed it, Clarence Anglin followed it. Alan West was left behind. The dummy heads stayed behind, the empty beds stayed behind. And the prison had been fooled. Less than a year later, Alcatraz closed. But the question stayed open. Did they drown in the dark or disappear into history? No bodies, no answer. Only 3 empty beds on the rock.